In this experiment, tossing a coin and rolling a die, the sample space is this one, like what we have learned from our previous video. But how do we know the exact number of possible outcomes in a certain sample space? And what are the other alternatives in finding a sample space? You can use a tabular method. It is also called the multiplication table, wherein you can organize the two events. So our two events here are tossing of a coin and rolling a die. So the row is the tossing of a coin of heads and tails, and the column represents the number of outcomes in rolling a die. And you can see here all the possible outcomes of this experiment. And the set of these possible outcomes is our sample space. You can also use the tree diagram, where in the first column is the sample space, which is the heads and tails. In our second column, the sample space of a die, which is numbers 1 to 6. Then, for our outcome, that is the pair of our coin and a die. So you can see here visibly all the possible outcomes of this experiment. And the set of these outcomes is our sample space. You can also use the systematic listing. In here, you will just simply write the outcomes in organized and systematic way, so that you will make sure that no outcomes will be overlooked. And lastly, the fundamental counting principle, wherein in here you will just write the two events, the tossing of a coin and rolling of a die. So in tossing of a coin, the sample space is 2, the heads and tails. In rolling a die, the sample space is 6, that is the numbers or the faces of a cube or a die, which is numbers 1 to 6. Now, to get the number of all possible outcomes, just simply multiply them, and that is 12. And this 12 is the number of all possible outcomes of our sample space. So if you're going to count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and that is the number of all possible outcomes using the fundamental counting principle. It is commonly used especially if we are dealing with more than 2 events. So in this case, we only have 2 events, the coin and the die. But if it has more than 2 events, it is a little bit hard to use systematic listing, tabular, and tree diagram. But the good thing in using tree diagram, tabular method, and systematic listing is we can see the outcomes visibly.